The first order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Ken to lead us with his flag. Here it is. Okay, go for it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, the first order of business is any public comment not related to something on the agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes.
am I allowed to make a public comment for a member of the public that isn't here?
Okay, I guess that's
I don't know. I mean, got to ask Patrick.
Is that okay, Patrick, if someone makes a comment for a member not here?
If the director wants to do that, I think it's okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
So there's a gentleman in our district. There's a gentleman in our district named Cameron Jeffs, been trying to get a water main extension. And to get a water main extension, usually you have to have water permits. And this person doesn't seem to have enough connections or permits to do the project. But he has called me and I think another member of this group and complained about his treatment. But I know that this process was started about 2 years ago or something, and it's been banging around. And so I just want to make a public statement that when people feel that things aren't appropriately, dealt with by the district, that they come to the public meeting and they speak publicly and they comment about their concerns. Happy to talk to any member of the district that has a concern, but it's frustrating to me because it's time consuming. And then when the person doesn't appear, it's frustrating. So I don't know if there's a way for us to encourage staff to process these in a certain direction. But my opinion is we're a public agency. These are public decisions. They have to be done transparently and fairly. And I think the best venue for that is our public meeting, whether it's on Zoom or not. That's my comment. And I don't know if staff has a response or if we get to discuss it, but my encouragement is when these issues come up, bring them to the public meeting and let them address us. And that takes it off the back of staff. Our staff is so busy right now that we don't really need noise. And I think that we need to support staff in taking away noise. And I think when we get noise and we start to individually report it back to staff, it takes staff time. I don't think that's fair to all of our constituents across the board. So that's my comment in part for that person's comment. And I just would welcome anybody that's concerned about their treatment to come talk to us. We're very public and very transparent. Thank you, Mr. President.
And just for the record, that now that I've heard the comment, that sounds like it's more appropriate under item 6, which is meetings attended director comments. So I think that was an appropriate director's comment.
Okay, so I'd like to my comment to director's comment, if that's okay.
We'll take that as information for the future and understand that comments of that nature could be done in that way. I believe the comment is well taken. That's what the public meeting is for. And my view has always been that we are amongst the most transparent agencies in the Bay Area, and that we have never prohibited any public discussion or comment from any individual. And so we're welcome and open to that in any form or time frame. So please keep that in mind. Okay, so we're going to open the public hearing, Pat. Is that correct? I don't have to just go to item 4 and start the public hearing.
Yes, if there's no more regular public comments for items not on the agenda, you can move on to item 4.
All right, hearing no further comments, then I will move on to item 4, which is a public hearing. And the hearing is to consider the proposed amendment to the rate and fee schedule to add water shortage contingency stage rates and San Francisco Public Utilities Commission pass-through wholesale water shortage rates or surcharges. Consideration of the resolution 2022-01 amending the rate and fee schedule and finding that the amendment is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. I will ask Mary, Program General Manager, to please discuss the subject for us.
Okay, well, thank you, President Feldman. First, I want to introduce Sanjay Gar and Nancy Fan from Raftellus Financial Consultants, who will be giving a presentation. Before they get started, I would like to just go over a few things, and I am going to share my screen. And can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to just go through the process and what we've gone through over the last 6 months or so in coming up with these water shortage contingency stage rates. So we started off on June 8th when the board approved the district's water shortage contingency plan. And this plan provides for 6 water shortage stage levels and recommended actions and procedures that the board can implement during any water shortage, including drought, but also natural or other disasters and catastrophic infrastructure failures. So in the summer of 2021, we engaged Raftellus Financial Consultants to model these water shortage contingency stage rates, and they're based. They used our updated our water financial plan rate update dated August 3rd, 2020, and our May 15th, 2018 cost of service and rate study, consistent with Prop 218, and then. On September 14th, we had at our regular board meeting, we had a workshop with Raftellus to review rate modeling. So after that, we had on November 9th, we had the final report was presented, the water shortage contingency stage rate study prepared by Raftellus. The board scheduled a public hearing and authorized staff to issue a public notice on November 24th. The notice of public hearing and proposed amendment was they were mailed to property owners and customers. December 7th, we had another board meeting where we included a discussion on some FAQs surrounding the water shortage contingency stage rates, and we posted those on our website. And these were based on questions we had received from customers and some of the protests. And then on today, we're having the public hearing. So what we hope to answer questions. One of our focus on frequently asked questions, which Sanjay and Nancy will address in their presentation. But what are these water shortage contingency stage rates? When and how do these rates go into effect? When do these water shortage contingency stage rates end once they're implemented? Do these rates include penalties? We get, people saying, but my water use is already low. How will my bill be impacted? And can CCWD reduce costs to cover revenue shortfalls in a water shortage a situation? So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sanjay and Nancy, who will take us through their presentation.
Thank you, Mary.
Mr. Chair, make a comment prior to that.
Yes, John.
I want the individuals that sent protest letters to know that I have read each one thoroughly in the last few days. So I appreciate their comments, but I respect them also, and I will have comments on this item in the evening goes on. Thank you.
Okay. Sanjay, you want to go for it?
Sure. President, board members, staff, public, it's my pleasure to do this presentation. And as we all know, we're in this pandemic situation, so we're doing this virtually, so I can't meet you in person, but second the best thing. So today, just first want to acknowledge that you can hear me well. Maybe Mary, you can let me know. Okay, good. Perfect. All right. So what we're going to be talking about is, these different questions that the general manager brought up. Mary, what are these rates? The stages associated, the financial implication, cost recovery, customer impacts, and the logistics. Next slide, please. So why do we need the water shortage contingency stage rate? So, why do we need this? So first, let's take a step back and just understand the nature of providing water service. So first, the water service is a fixed cost business. And when we use that word fixed cost, that means that the cost of providing that service does not change too much with the water use. And if you look at the operating budget, actually, and look at item by item and ask ourselves, well, if somebody stopped using water, or if somebody used more water, which item in our line of our budget would change? 72% of that is fixed. So regardless of how much or how little water people use, 72% of that cost is there. And that's the fixed cost nature of providing service, because we provide water 24/7, 7 days a week. We also meet certain standards that are set by the federal government, the Clean Water Act, with regard to making sure that the water is drinkable. So all those things need to occur regardless if we use water or not. Now, there is some variable cost, and that's the purchase cost from San Francisco PUC. So that's that remaining 28%. Now, that's just the operating cost. In addition, there's capital cost. The capital cost is to refurbish the system. In some sense, the refurbishing of the system is like a car or a house. You always have to make sure we maintain the system. And that's basically a $6 million a year, and that's also an additional fixed cost. So as we can see, just from an operating perspective, very high, and then we add the capital even more so. So on the revenue side, though, only 21% of the revenue is fixed cost, and that's from the meter charge. So when we ask, well, why don't we increase the fixed cost to equal the fixed revenue? Well, the reason why we don't do that is that we want to maintain affordability for low-end water users and to promote conservation. If we did cover all our fixed costs and the fixed revenue, what would happen all of a sudden is that cost, that meter charge, would be $80 a month. So this discrepancy between the fixed cost nature of a water utility and the goal of maintaining affordability on the water rates creates this financial instability when water use is significantly cut back. And that's what we're talking about, is a water storage contingency when a cutback occurs. And hopefully this doesn't happen often, but we are entering an uncharted territory where this may occur more often than we'd like. Next slide. So so we talked about what are these. So given Prop 218, which is where rates fall under, these are designed to cover the lost revenue due to the reduction of water use and the difference in purchased water. So the district is blessed. It does have some local water available, which is extremely affordable. But when that water runs out, then the district has to lean on San Francisco PUC, which is much more significantly higher. The water shortage contingency plan has specific stages defined, which we're following. And what this does is that it provides flexibility in implementing the appropriate stages. One of the challenges we've seen this last decade, and unfortunately I feel like we're going to see even more so this next decade, is how quickly the water supply conditions changes. You know, as you can see already, it rained a lot, and look, there's a lot of snow, but we're still not out of the woods. The reservoirs are low. As we notice, it's gotten a little bit warmer now. I'm always interested to know, well, has it stopped raining this year? Is it going to rain more? There's so much unknowns here. And so what this does is it provides flexibility so we can pivot quickly. It doesn't mean you have to implement them. It just means that you have that tool if needed. Next slide. So what are the steps? So the steps are, first is how should water be allocated? You already defined that in your water contingency plan. Next step is where we come in, which is how much will this cost us financially in the sense of reduction in revenue and in purchase of SFPUC water more expensive? What's the policy of how should we recover this in the rates? And then how will this affect our customers? So we're going to talk about all of these steps. I'm going to turn it over to Nancy. I believe we're on slide 6, and she'll talk about these steps.
Thanks so much, Sanjay, and good evening, board of directors and the public. I'll be going over the first 2 steps of developing water shortage contingency stage rates. First of which is determining how water should be allocated. Next slide, please. So water should be allocated based on the water shortage stages as defined in the district 2020 water shortage contingency plan. So each stage that we're showing here, stages 1 through 6, shows the percentage of water for each customer relative to that class's water use during normal conditions. So for example, in stage 1, single family use, 85% of baseline use, which is equal to a 15% reduction in that class overall. And then the target reduction goal at the very bottom there represents the total percent of water reduction for the entire district in each stage. Next slide, please. So then we then apply those water reduction targets in each stage to each of the customer classes, as you can see on this table here. This is used to determine the estimated water sales in each stage. So the baseline water use, which is shown in the second column there, that represents estimated fiscal year 22 use under normal non-water shortage conditions. And then the estimated use in each following stage shows how much water is allotted to the individual customer classes. Next slide, please. So once we've estimated water usage for each stage, we can then determine the financial costs of reduced water consumption. Slide. So when we're determining the cost impact during water shortage conditions, we often ask a couple of important questions before we dig into the numbers. So first is how much revenue is lost from commodity charges due to cutbacks in use? And then how will water shortages impact the availability as well as the cost of the district's water supply? And finally, will this have an impact on the district's operating costs? So through discussions with district staff and guidance from the board in prior meetings, there are 2 ways that the district will be financially impacted during water shortages. So the first is going to be lost commodity revenue, which ties back to the estimated water sales that we saw a couple of slides ago. And then the second is changes in water supply costs, specifically the water that's purchased from SFPUC. Next slide. So there's a lot of numbers on this table, so I'll try to take it step by step. The upper table on this slide shows the water supply sources during baseline conditions as well as in each shortage stage. The district during normal water supply conditions has access to local surface and groundwater. However, in stage one, the local supply decreases quite substantially. And then in stages 2 and onward, it's completely depleted. So that means that the district has to purchase water from SFPUC to make up the remaining demand in each stage. The total water sales on the bottom line of the first table shows decreasing water sales as the shortages become more severe in each stage. So after we have the estimated water sales as well as how the supply mix shakes out in each of the stages, we can then determine the costs, which are shown in the second table. Okay, so the first line is, the first line is lost commodity revenue. That represents the impact due to customers cutting back water use during shortages. And then the second line, which is SFPUC water purchase costs, that shows the impact of that shift in water supply mix. And so because local supply is impacted by water shortages, the district has to purchase more water from SFPUC in stages 1 through 3 as compared to the baseline, which is why those costs in stages 1 through 3 for SFPUC are higher. And then in stages 4 and beyond, because the cutbacks are pretty severe, we'll be purchasing less water from SFPUC, so you can see some cost savings there. And then that total cost at the bottom of that second table, that represents how much revenue the water shortage contingency stage rates are designed to recover. Additionally, these stage rates are based on current SFPUC rates, but if SFPUC implements water shortage rates and or surcharges above and beyond what we're showing here, then the district can pass these costs through. Slide. Okay, Sanjay, back to you.
Thank you, Nancy. So once we've understand the financial impact of these different stages, next question is how should we recover this? Next slide, please. So there's first two things, there's rates and penalties. And it's important to understand the distinction between the two. Rate is a financial tool to deal with the financial restriction of the financial implications of a water restriction. It's a revenue generation. And because of that, it must meet the Prop 218 nexus requirement. We have a report that we provided to the district that shows you the math, logic, and rationality, which is a requirement. Penalties is an enforcement tool. So think of penalties as like a speeding ticket, running a stop sign. It's a non-revenue generation and it's strictly punitive. And it's not based on cost of service as a violation. So in the ideal world, there is no penalties. Everyone, follows the rules. But unfortunately, there would be water shortage contingency stage rates to deal with the financial implication. Next slide. So what are the different options? There are three options. We had a workshop with the board where we discussed all three options, whether it's a uniform, whether it's basically a percent applied to the tiers that you currently have, or a fixed monthly charge. There's pros and cons with each one of these approaches. We go to the next slide. And we have little stars here where we have different objective, administrative ease, guaranteed revenue, ability for the customer to change their bill, target conservation, promotes affordability. More stars are better than less. We worked with the board and trying to understand what makes sense in our community. We agreed that the uniform percent is the best compromise between these three in the sense that it provides customers the ability to change their bill, affordability. Now, we do acknowledge that if you use very, very little water, you will see an impact on this. But that impact is, the other two options would even have a greater impact. So it's important to note that if we did a monthly, then even that person who uses like 3 units or 2 units will see even more of an impact. Or if we did a uniform commodity, they would even see a more impact than our current approach that we're recommending. So it's a relativity in some sense. Next slide. So what we have here are the different stages, and we have the increase that's needed. These are the proposed stage rates, water contingency stage rates right here. We've added them to the current rate structure where you see them. The challenge here with the district is that the district has done an excellent job and using very little water. And so that's great from a water resource management tool perspective and a good stewardship. The challenge is on the financial side. That means that we're chasing water molecules to cover fixed costs. And then when we have this drought and we're restricting it more, you see that impact. Next slide. So one of the things we want to know is what does this do to our customers with these cutbacks? And really the question is if you follow what we ask you to do, if you do cut back will your bill overall increase or will it relatively stay the same? And if you don't cut back, what will happen to your bill? So that's what we look at next. So what we, so we have basically right over here, 3 different usages, 7 units. This is a 7-unit person billing unit. This is stage 2. So if there was no drought, that's the first column that you see, they would pay $116.92, and we have the different components of that baseline. So now there's a drought. It's a 21% reduction. We asked that person to reduce their water use. They do that by 21%. There is a drought surcharge of $25, but the commodity drops, as you can see, it was 85 to 63. The fixed charge still stays the same. And so the bill has slightly increased by a little bit more than $3. Now, if you go to the next column, this is a person who does not cut back. So they're still using that $85 commodity, they have the $31 fix, and now they have this drought surcharge. So now their bill does jump up significantly to $150 compared to $117. So that's stage 2. So we've also done the same analysis for stage 3, where this person uses, again, the first column is the same, 7 units, $85 on the commodity, $31 in the fix, so $117 approximately. Now we're in stage 3. That person, 30% reduction, complies with that. The drought rate now is $30. Their commodity drops to 53. And as you can see, the bill is basically slightly lower, but basically the same. Now this next individual doesn't cut back. So then they see that drop penalty of $47 or $48, and then the other 2 components are the same as the baseline. So their bill significantly drops up, increases, to $164 or $165. So based on, one of the things is how are we going to implement this? Based on the Prop 218 requirement, these are the maximum the board can implement for each stage. As mentioned, there may be additional costs that SFPUC may pass on, which the district would pass on. So when the board is deciding whether to implement it, today the board is just considering to adopt it, not to implement. The board could always implement something lower than that stage, the associated stage, so they can go even lower. They could use reserves. They could defer capital projects. Now, it's important to know that deferring capital project doesn't mean that capital project goes away. In some sense, it's like deferring the changing of your tires. If your tires are slightly bald, eventually that's going to catch up to you. So eventually you have to change the tires. So it's important to remember that, you can defer it, you can kick it down the road a little bit, but not that much further, or any combination of the above. So this is a balancing act. One of the challenges with these things is, are we entering into a 1-year drought or mild drought? Are we entering into a 3-year drought, a 4-year drought? And those are the unknowns. And that's why it's important to have this tool in your tool belt so that you can pivot and move as you go in and out of this situation, and you can sort of plan ahead. Next slide.
Excuse me for interrupting, the chair, through the chair. This slide, is this possibly contradicting with respect to our fixed cost of 72% when we're looking at trying to implement these different lower stage rates and reserves and all that, or does it impact it at all yet at this point?
So the challenge is that because we're not covering all our fixed costs, that's why we're looking at all these different options.
Okay.
That's the challenge here, is that we, if we had our fixed costs covered, our fixed revenue, then we wouldn't have the discussion. These impacts are significant. We acknowledge that. And because of that, we are trying to see, well, what else can we do? What other options we have? And those are using reserves or deferring capital projects.
I think the reason I bring it up, it's most important for our individuals that have protested notes sent to us, and for the public to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. I think we have one more. Yeah. So the logistics of implementing the water shortage contingency stage rates. So first, the board must declare we're in the stage. May of 2021, the board did declare we're in stage 1. Second, the board must take action in implementing the stage rates. To do that, a written notice must mail to all customers at least 30 days prior to implementation. So that's the logistics of implementing it. And then once you go out of it, the board can rescind that stage rate. So that's our presentation. We're both here available to answer any questions that you may have or the public.
Okay, so the public hearing is open at this point, and we are interested in any public comments. Is there anyone who's joined us that has any comments?
Yes, if I may. My name is, do I have permission to speak? Let me first confirm that. All right, thank you. So my name is Rupi Singh. I'm a resident of Half Moon Bay. As I already said, I'm on 3rd Avenue. Been here for 16 years. And obviously I've seen a number of these cycles where water usage is obviously an issue. And this is, I'm not trying to pick on anybody or anything, but my first question is, in the stats that were shown, roughly what percentage of water in the city, or first and foremost, is the Ritz-Carlton a CCWD customer? And if so, what percentage of the total water usage in the district comes from that one big client? Does anybody, and again, if you don't have the answer, I'm happy to wait for that till a little later, because I just wanted to bring up a couple of other points. One is that, and I understand this entire structure of, stage 1 through to stage 6. Realistically, increasing somebody's water bill by $50 a month or $60 a month is not going to lead to much reduced usage. Where people are used to paying $2 million for a home, let's be brutally honest, 50 or $100 a month is not going to break anybody's wallet. So are there any more punitive measures that are likely to be implemented or should be considered to make sure people follow the rules? Because again, I'm not the kind of person who breaks rules. I will follow the rules, but if somebody asks me, already I'm paying a lot more for gas in this month, so one can afford these things. How about, and this is just a thought, has the water district considered a manner whereby, based on the number of occupants per home, they determine what a baseline usage would be? So, for a home with two people, let's say you have 4 units, 5 units, and for a home with 4 people, you have double that or whatever, or maybe not double because usage doesn't exactly go up per person. Because the issue is that people who have hot tubs, possibly some people have smaller pools at home, their usage is already going to be pretty high. Is there going to be any attempt to discourage the use of extra water usage beyond, your laundry, your kitchen usage, and your personal usage for baths and toilets? Has any consideration been given to that? Will any consideration be given to that? And final thing was, and I'm going to get it all out so you guys can think about it. Final thing is in terms of water usage for watering lawns, which, as we know, is a huge waste of water. Are there going to be any restrictions on that when you enter stage 2 or stage 3, that no, you cannot water your lawns, you have to let it die? Like mine died about 2 or 3 summers ago when we had a severe shortage of water, and I literally turned my sprinklers off. So these are the things I wanted to bring up, and I will now let whoever feels they're the best to deal with it or get back to me later. Like I said, I'm fine to reach out to somebody and get answers on this later. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
No, good job.
Thanks for the comments, Ruby. Mary, did you want to comment on any of these items that Ruby's brought up at the front end here?
Your first question in terms of hotels, I can't give you the Ritz, but just in general, all of our hotels used about 3% of our water last year. So that's anyway. So that's not a they're.
I am surprised. Well, I'm glad, but I'm really surprised given the golf courses that we have in town. I'm just really surprised at that. But okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, and then as we move forward with the drought and understand where we're going to be at with the drought, we will consider ordinances that may where we will be looking for limitations in watering. Already this early January, the State Water Resources Control Board has instituted regulations, which you'll hear later in our board meeting. But basically, there are tools that we will use if this drought worsens. And in terms of there are other avenues as well. I mean, right now we're the good news that it rained in December, but we're not out of the drought yet.
Comments from anyone else regarding these questions? I will say that we do have monitoring of water use through our Water Smart program, and we're able to capture data, which allows us to talk or contact people who are using what appear to be significant amounts of water, which means they may be watering lawns. And we've, I think, talked to over 600 of our customers already about that. We are trying to find ways to make sure everybody is playing by the rules. And the way that we structured this water shortage contingency plan drought thing is to be equitable amongst all the users in our community. It's very difficult to be granular to down to one or two people in areas where there may be a number of people living in an environment. There's no way to really know that. The only thing you can do is look at the water consumption and apply an equal and fair assessment to the additional uses of the water to all people in an equitable manner. So we've taken all this. This has been a very difficult road for us to have to deal with this over the last 5 months, to try and come up with a way to do this that's equitable, but yet protects the community going forward to be sure that we have sufficient water for our needs should this drought continue. And we have to make it really clear to all the people who have been involved with this and who are worrying about this. This is a contingency plan. It's a reserve plan. It's a fallback plan. It does not happen until the situation requires it. There is no change of any sort to any rates at any point until it becomes necessary. And when it does, we would advise the community of that with notice and advise them of any other options that we might be able to use to help defray this if possible. But right now, this is a plan, a fallback, a safety valve, call it what you will. We have to do the right thing for the community, and we have to be prepared for the worst eventualities should they happen. I'm sorry, anybody else? John.
I think it's very well said, Mr. Chair, but I would like to just follow up with that a little bit. And you mentioned the word worry. Well, let me tell you, from 2020 and 2021, and as I heard recently, there's a lot more people worrying more and more about what we're all facing. And I've been born and raised here on the coast, and I've lived through floods in 54, 55, and lived through droughts. But I will say one thing about this Coastside County Water District. Thank God it is in place, because I don't think we ever had a customer of over 7,000 that had to worry about the quality and volume of their water passing through their meter. I think that's just an amazing tribute to our staff and board members for the foresight of providing fresh, safe drinking water to our customer base. And we have to continue to do that. And boy, that fixed price of 70% really got my attention, and I hope it gets the attention of other people, that the investment we are making now, it doesn't cost my friends, it pays. So that's my statement right now. But I think the chair said it very powerful and well about our worry, because we're all worried about so many other things. But boy, thank goodness we're not worried about our water in our passing through our meter. We are worried about the water supply. And let me tell you, whether it's agriculture or anybody else, we are concerned about this future of water in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments? Director comments, please. Ken, Director Culligan.
Yep.
You're on mute.
Yeah, thanks. I never realized I was muted. Thank you. I thought the presentation by Sanjay and Nancy today was fantastic. And I really appreciated seeing the numbers as we go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, 4, 5, and down the line. I only had a suggestion, actually, and that is we have a fixed allocation from the SFPUC. And there's a point at which if we go over that allocation, that's where there could be penalties on our water use. And I just wondered if somehow there could be a line or something added to your sheet that shows where that line is, how many gallons that is, or how many 100 cubic feet of water that is compared to these reductions. It's just a suggestion and maybe a difficult mathematical configuration, but sometimes I think it's important for the customers to see what our agreement really states, because we are restricted by how much water we can take from SFPUC. And I don't know when we, get to the point where that's a challenge. So it's a suggestion, and that's what I've got.
Bob, we have another public comment. You see the hand raised?
Where? I'm sorry.
Clauses 1.
Yes. My name is Sandra Clausen. I live in El Granada, actually, and I appreciate having a chance to speak. I don't usually have the opportunity to make it to your in-person meetings, so this Zoom one is beneficial for me. I just have a couple questions, and they can also be addressed at a later time if necessary. This report was done based on giving a cost based on use of 7 units, and I don't have my bill in front of me, so it's difficult for me to know how that relates to what an average household uses. So I can understand that, if this is the average, it doesn't seem like it's that extreme of a situation. I do have to disagree with the previous gentleman that I think $50 a month can be a huge impact for people that are on fixed incomes, especially seniors. I'm not in that position, but knowing a lot of seniors, I think it could be a very big impact, especially when you consider how much the cost of everything else has gone up in just the last year. Some things over 30% here in the Bay Area. So anyway, I also had a quick question, two other questions. One is this going to also be an increase in the meter costs that new construction people like myself have had to pay, that has gone up every year pretty much, where it's just a meter. It's not even consuming water. Nobody's even reading it as far as I know. It's just the meter for our fire sprinkler system, which I've never understood why it even needed to go up at all. And then my last question is, since I don't get to your meetings very often, are there any capital projects that are going on to increase the amount of water reserves that we can create in years when we're getting a lot of rain that would alleviate some of the dependency on San Francisco? So anyway, if you have a moment to address any of those questions, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for my time, for letting me speak.
Thank you for the question. Mary, did you want to comment on any of the...
Well, I'd say, first of all, with these water shortage contingency stage rates, they're only on the commodity charge, not the meter charge. And again, these are, this is a contingency that there needs to be additional board action to implement those rates. So they would have to, they'd be, declaring a water shortage emergency stage. There would be there would then be the implementation of whether or not they go with these rates, or that we choose other angles, or other, with reserves, looking at capital, looking at other areas. And then the third is there's a 30 days notice. But just on your question, the meter, there's no additional charge on the meter. The other piece, and we are looking at other avenues to develop local sources. And so, we are looking at capital projects for that. It is something where our local sources are surface water sources primarily. So those are generally not available to us in droughts. But it is something that we are, it's very important to us to look at, and I know to the board, we've had a strategy session on local sources recently. So.
Okay, thank you.
The strategic planning sessions was definitely in regard to finding ways to handle problems like this going forward. And we did come up with a prioritized list of areas that we would look at, including additional wells and refurbishment of existing wells to increase our local water supply for other than just the surface water that we get from the normal rainfall, et cetera. So that was a good question, but we are definitely interested in that and looking forward to making some progress on those options. Other public questions? Any other public comments? Okay, so hearing none, Pat, I guess I can close the public session now and then ask for director comments after that.
Yeah, that would be fine. Just for the record, there were 11 protest letters that were submitted in advance of this public hearing. All of those protest letters were sent to the directors separately in advance of the meeting. So we just want the record to be clear that we did receive 11 protest letters in addition to the comments that we received tonight during the public hearing. And yes, it would be appropriate if there's no more public comments for you to close the public hearing, and then the board can provide more comments and discuss this in more detail.
Okay, so I'll close the public comments portion and ask for board comments. Any further board comments? Okay, hearing none, then I will ask for, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a very brief comment. I think we have set the stage to be prepared for the unexpected. And I think that's so important. That is really so important to our elected and appointed positions to be prepared for the unexpected, whether it's droughts, floods, disasters. We have to be prepared. And this is a first step for us to be prepared. Let's hope it's not needed, but Coastside County Water District will be prepared if it's needed. And that worry, as I mentioned earlier, will not be as dangerous as what it could have been if we are not prepared for potential drought. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
And Bob, I'd like to make a comment. I think that it's important for the community to understand that the board has spent a considerable time reviewing and discussing and working on options that when we get a drought imposed on us by the supplier, which is where we get our water, we have to figure out how to equitably manage that's fair to the entire community. And it's it's never going to be a perfect system. It has to cover everybody from the large users to the little users. And it's really going to always be a compromise. And so we're glad that the public is participating and chipping in their comments and thoughts. And we take very seriously how we can do it so that it's equitable, transparent, and fair. And I'm really proud that we've worked really hard on that. But I do think that it is important to acknowledge that there's never a magic or perfect solution when there isn't enough water to go around to all the users. That's why it's called a shortfall. Not easy, but thank you for participating in this process with us. Thanks, Bob. I'll yield back to you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Chris, I'm sorry.
If I may. I just wanted to reinforce what the other directors said. This is a contingency plan. We'd be remiss in our duty as elected officials not to have a robust contingency plan, and that this is. We hope it never gets implemented. I really don't want to be the one imposing this on our customer base, but we may have to, and this will be decided by either the governor's office, our main supplier as SFPUC, and we need to be prepared for, this what may be an eventuality should water emergency be declared. And we have what I feel is actually a very fair, equitable, and easy to understand program. And I would like to think that we are being proactive, and I hope our customers will really take the time to understand how we got to where we did this evening, and understand that should this come to fruition, that we, spent time, months, multiple meetings on a fair and equitable plan. And I too did read through the letters. Thank you for including those. And the one exception I could see here is, or one issue that could potentially come up is larger or extended families or multiple families living in one home under 1 meter. That may be an issue of fairness down the road, and I just want to throw that out there. We may find ourselves having to revisit that a little bit, so this really is as fair and equitable as it should be. Anyhow, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Can I have a motion for the board action item B? Someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion that, oh, sorry, I got to read the thing, don't I?
Yes.
Give me 2 seconds. I want to get it right. Public hearing to, conduct adopt resolution. We ready for that?
Yeah.
All right. Adopt resolution 22-01, Exhibit B, amending the rate and fee schedule to add water shortage contingency stage rates and San Francisco Public Utilities Commission pass-through wholesale water shortage rates or surcharges, and finding that the amendment is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
I second it.
Okay, the motion's been seconded. Can we have a vote, please, Gina?
Sure. Director Coverdale?
Aye.
Director Michelson?
Yes.
Director Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Mueller?
Aye.
And President Feldman?
Yes. Okay, so the resolution's been passed. And I want to thank Sanjay and Nancy for their presentation this evening and for joining us and their work on getting us to this point. So thank you very much for that. And we will move forward now to item 5 on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. Are there any items any of the directors wish to discuss or to take off the agenda for later discussion at this point?
Mr. President?
Yes.
When I was reviewing the financial reports in the packet today, Is it okay to just continue to make a comment, or do you want me to request that we pull a couple of the items? What would you prefer?
Which items are you talking about?
In the financial statements, especially in the quarterly statements, the way it was reported looked confusing to me.
Mr. Chair, you have to pull it. You can't just move on as a consent with his discussion.
Well, let me ask Mary this. We have a quarterly summary later in the agenda. Will it be covered in that for you, Ken? Mary has the quarterly financial.
Yeah, that would be fine. It's mostly just a reporting style. And so I'm fine with discussing it then. And the only other comment that I wanted to make was, shouldn't we be approving this Zoom meeting reality? It's about number 6 on our agenda. But aren't we supposed to be making a finding that it's no longer safe to meet in public? And shouldn't we do that before we meet on the Zoom meeting? Or just more of a point of order?
I don't know, legally speaking, as long as we do it during the meeting sometime, Patrick, I would assume it's okay. It's just, we make the approval during the meeting as part of our agenda. That's all they asked for. It didn't say when in the meeting, did it?
Yeah, from a legal perspective, it's okay to do it as long as it's done during the meeting. But if directors would prefer that it be done at the beginning, that would be okay to do as well.
I think it makes more sense to do it before the meeting occurs. You know, I mean, so what if we get halfway through the meeting, we decide that we don't really need to? I mean, I don't think we will, but I'm just asking a question.
I'm 6 months after the others. I mean, I'm fine with where it is now, but I'll move it we can move it if it makes sense. It becomes what, the first part of the agenda?
I think
we didn't put it on the consent calendar purposely. We didn't put it on the consent calendar because we wanted to bring it out as a separate item, and I didn't think it mattered where we did it.
What about if we decide for next month's meeting, and so then we have, you know, that way the next coming month is determined, and the staff has time to plan for it.
Yeah. I'm okay.
I'm fine with that. It just seemed.
Do that, Mary, next month, put it up at the front end after the consent calendar. Does that make sense?
Fine.
Or is that an item of general business? That's the problem. It's in the general business section, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's not at the beginning of the agenda. So I don't know if we change the whole numbering scheme to do that. That's my problem. It's really part of the general business.
Keep it as general business and decide about the following month's meeting, and then it doesn't matter.
Agree.
I don't know if you want to predict 30 days in advance whether it's safe or not. I mean, I think the intent of the law is to do it, to adopt the resolution and then reaffirm it within 30 days, which is usually at your next board meeting. If the board wanted to, just like tonight, you have a special order of business right after public comment before you even get to the consent calendar. Each month, we could have this as a special order of business to consider whether the board wants to continue to meet remotely and have that item right up at the front. I mean, there's a lot of options. It's just whatever the board's preference is.
Well, as neurotic as it sounds, it just makes more sense. You know, we agree that we should be holding this meeting Zoom, and then we hold the meeting. I think the logic is good. I'm not trying to be a stickler here. It just makes more sense.
Mary, do you want to sort of take us to the next item and see if there's a way to position this that meets everybody's objectives here? Is that possible?
Yes.
A little general order of design, however you do it so that it's legal and that it works as Ken seems to feel comfortable with having it at the outset more than later in the meeting. I'm fine that way. Okay? I'll leave it to Mary to have it set up for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Appropriate.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Sorry to be a thorn.
Let's see. Any other comments on the consent agenda. Okay, let me get back to go here. So can I have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
So moved. And I did review the claims and found them to be satisfactory. So I would like to move that we pass the consent agenda as a whole.
Can I have a second?
This is Glenn. I'll second it.
Okay. Have a second, a motion and a second. Can I have a vote, please?
Okay, Director Coverdell?
Yes.
Director Michelson?
Yes.
Director Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Moeller?
Aye, I'm still an aye guy.
And President Feldman?
Yes. Okay. Next item on the agenda is meetings attended and director comments. Any meetings attended or general comments from directors?
I just have a short report.
Go ahead, Kim.
So I'd like to give a 20-second report on snow quality in the Sierra Nevada. We went up there at 38 inches and we left there at 210 inches. It doesn't look like enough to get us out of the drought, but I would say it's significant. I was thrilled. Everything was closed for miles. Power was out. It was unbelievable. We had one of those great Sierra storms, and you know, that's all water in the bank. So it's probably not enough to turn the thing 100% around, but it was sure a welcome sight after a couple of very dry and sparse years. So that's my report is there's snow in the high Sierra.
Okay, well, that's good news. Hopefully that will help going forward to offset the need for, quote, the contingency drought plan. And let's keep our fingers crossed that this stuff is good and wet and lots of it in the fall. I mean, in the spring and wherever, yeah. Any other comments? Any other greetings? I guess it's been a quiet month with the activities over the holidays, etc. Okay, then next item is general business. And the first item is the Coastside County Water District basic financial statements, independent auditors report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. And I'll ask Mary to introduce the auditors. Thank you.
Okay, so I am very pleased to welcome Mr. Chris Brown, partner at FDAC and Brown, and he'll give us a brief overview of the district's audited financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, and answer any questions. So Chris, and I will share my screen, and hopefully I'm better this go around.
Well, thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I was playing with my microphone. I want to make sure I didn't turn it off. Once again, thank you very much for having me. My name is Christopher Brown. I'm partner with FDAC and Brown, go over the financial results for 2021. I'd be remiss not to say Happy New Year to everybody. And yes, I agree, rain is fantastic. I made it up to the Sierras and I saw the fantastic snowfall, and I'm really hoping that this is the beginning of the end of drought talk, but we will see. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, the audit was performed in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. And what that means is that these are basically the guidelines that the auditor must follow when conducting the audit itself. As far as the actual audit, it was broken up into two time periods, one being the interim field work, which is prior to your year end, and final field work, which is after your year end close. During interim field work, we're assessing the internal controls of the district. We're taking a look at the various accounting cycles, and we're testing on a sample basis the various cycles, such as your cash cycle, your revenue cycle, your payroll cycle, and such. From that, we design our audit programs when we come in to do the final field work. When we do the final field work, we're essentially agreeing the balances to the supporting documentation and performing other tests that we deem necessary as part of our preparation for the final field work. We're also performing analysis within the key relationships within the financials as well. Okay? So that's kind of the big picture of what the audit is, okay? With regard to the documents that come out of the audit, there's two, essentially. There's the financial report and the management report. And within the financial report is the auditor's opinion. And here you see a paragraph taken from that, and it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Coastside County Water District as of June 30th, 2021. So we're providing you with a clean or an unmodified opinion. So congratulations upon that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. There you go. Okay, the other document I referred to is the management report, and that is our communication to you, the board. You are my boss. We don't answer to management, we answer to the board. It's your best interest that we have in mind. When we're conducting the audit, and to you, we report. And I'm happy to report that we did not identify a material weakness within the district's internal control structure. Okay. Go ahead and advance to the next slide. Within the management report are essentially these bullet points. There's more, but these are kind of the bigger items here. But it basically spells out the responsibility of the auditor under U.S. gas. The scope of the audit, what we're doing, any comments we might have about accounting practices, and we don't have any comments on the district's accounting practices. Any corrected or uncorrected statements, that's included in there as well. I reviewed them, and they're essentially the adjustments to based off an actuarial study for OPEB and your pension. Pretty clean, pretty clean. No difficulties encountered in performing the audit, and we had no disagreements with management. As a matter of fact, I think it went very well. Management, the accounting team did a fantastic job of providing information in a very timely manner, and we thank them for that. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so we kind of covered the how it happens, and here's the end result here. What we have here is the condensed statement of net position. Now, this table is within the financial statements itself. It's within the management's discussion and analysis area at the beginning of the financial statement. And this is kind of on an aggregated big picture level. And you can see the total assets compared from prior year actually increased approximately 2.487 million. Biggest portion of that was within the current assets. So you saw an increase of approximately 1.89 million. Cash was essentially the big item that made up that increase there. Deferred outflows of resources is related to your OPEB and your pension liabilities. These are amounts that will essentially be applied to those liabilities next year. So that 1.128 million that you see in the 2021 column are amounts that mostly will be applied to those liabilities. Within the liability section, you can see it actually went down approximately 183,000. Big change from the prior year. I shouldn't say big change, but a change from the prior year. We see the current liabilities. I noted that a substantial amount was in deferred revenue area there. Non-current liability, we did see an increase in your pension liability and in your OPEB liability. It's fairly small as compared to other clients. That was offset by pay down of debt. So it looked pretty reasonable. Deferred inflows of resources, essentially the opposite of those deferred outflows. These tend to have an increase in your liability in the next year. Small amount there in a relative relatively speaking. Now, net position is what you might call your net worth. It's kind of like your assets minus your liabilities. And you can see that it's broken into 3 different areas, one being what you've invested in your capital assets, one being amounts that are restricted for things like debt service and capital projects, if there are any set aside for that, and then unrestricted. And that's one of the things that I tend to look at over a long-term basis. Like to see improvement or increase in the unrestricted balance. We all know things change from year to year, but when you're looking at a prolonged period, we like to see improvement in that number, and we do see that here. So you have an improvement of approximately 1.6 million from the prior year. What that tells me is that you're keeping your expenses within your revenue streams, and you're able to actually build that unrestricted, which of course aids in reserves and things like that. So, okay, go ahead. Yeah, there we go. Okay, what we have here is the other side. We were looking at assets and liabilities. This is revenues and expenses. And what I would like you to do is go ahead and advance one more slide here. We'll go through this narrative here, and then we'll fall back to that. But I'll kind of go through this fairly quickly, and then we'll drop back to the actual numbers. But you can see net position increased by 2.77 million as a result of ongoing operations. Total revenues increased approximately 427,000 to that 15,166. What makes up your total revenues? Revenues are gonna be your operating revenues, or what you do for a living, selling water, essentially. And you can see that it increased by 535,000 to that 13.4 million due to an increase in water consumption sales as compared to the prior year. Non-operating revenues being ancillary items, things like property tax, other charges, interest, things like that, actually decreased by 108,000, primarily due to a decrease of 119,000 in investment earnings. Just a note on that, we're seeing that across the board. Rates on investments are down from prior years. And of course, the other side of it is as we see interest rates rise in the future, we'll probably see a reversal in that trend. 24,000 in transmission and storage fees, 23,000 in other revenues, offset by an increase of 53,000 in property tax revenues. We can go to the next slide. Okay, with regard to expenses, this is including depreciation, increased by approximately 923,000. Like the revenues, expenses are broken out into operating and non-operating, but you can see operating expenses increased by 794,000 due to increases of 989,000 in source supply, 77,000 in pumping expense, 30,000 in general and administrative expense, offset by a decrease of 303,000 in transmission and distribution as compared to the prior year. Depreciation expense increased by 162,000. That's just a function of what you've capitalized, what came online during the year. Non-operating expense, things like interest expense and such, decreased by 33,000, primarily due to a decrease of 31,000 interest related to long-term debt. Of course, as you're paying down your debt and the balances go down, you're gonna pay less interest. 13,000 loss of disposal of capital assets. That's kind of a one-time thing, just normal sale off or disposal of capital assets, offset by a decrease of 11,000 in county collection fees. Now let's go ahead and go back to that table. I threw a whole bunch of numbers out at you, so we'll just kind of go through this fairly quick, and then I'll wrap it up here. There again, kind of looking at the big picture, we can see total revenue increased at 427,000. The item there, operating revenue, up to 535. Of course, we've commented on the non-operating revenue, big portion of that being the interest earnings. Total expense up 923,000, seeing increases. Source of supply, you're selling more water. Source of supply is going to go up as well. Depreciation, we went over that. Kind of the bottom line, looking at that 2021 column, change in net position, that's kind of like your net income. And we see to the positive, $2,771,468. So fairly solid year. So kind of just to summarize what I just kind of did a whirlwind tour through is I believe the audit went well. And there again, hats off to everybody that was involved, very responsive, timely in the response and the information provided. We were able to provide you with an unmodified opinion, clean opinion. We did not identify material weakness within your internal control structure. And you can see the results of your operations here. That is essentially my report. Do you have any questions?
I want to thank Chris for the excellent report and the excellent results at the outset, and say thank you for the clarity of the presentation and made it very easy for me to understand. I'll leave it to other directors to give us their comments now as well. Anybody have a comment?
Just a comment, a question. Chris, I appreciate your report. The report looks good. I'm asking the same question for over 20 years. That is,
excuse me.
Did we do a good job? Can't you just write down Coastside County Water District Management did a good job? That's my...
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to address that. I would say, when you say good job, there are many factors that go into that. One being measuring your results by your own expectations and things like that. However, I will go as the auditor, I will say, I think you did a good job. We were able to provide you with an unmodified opinion. We did not identify material weakness in your, as a matter of fact, that you had pretty clean controls. So you did a good job there. As far as the financial side, I commented that when I'm doing an analysis of the balance sheet, or the statement of net position is what it's really called, I look for that trend in your unrestricted, and we do see positive movement in that. So that kind of goes back to matching your revenues and your expenses, but also kind of big picture as far as your reserve levels and cash position is that based on kind of one of the rules of thumb that I've used for years is trying to maintain at least half a year's worth of operating expense, and you've beaten that twice. So based on those metrics there, I would say, yeah, you're in a pretty good position right now. And on top of that, your controls. So I hope that answers your question.
Hey, Ken's smiling, that's good. Any other comments? Chris? Any comments?
Yeah, actually, I was really encouraged. I think in relative terms, you said the ticking time bomb out there, pension liability, that we were actually pretty well off relative to other agencies that you've audited. I think that's what I heard you say. Yeah. And of that, I'm immensely proud that we aren't suffering from this pension liability time bomb that is looming out there in so many public agencies. So right. Thank you for putting some daylight on that.
Okay.
John or Glenn?
I'd just like to follow up quickly with that. I think our customer base has to understand we are not socking away a bunch of money too. As the professional accountant of your level, we're probably being as close as you can be for running the district at this level that we are. We're not saving a bunch of money and we're not wasting a bunch of money. I think it goes back to Director Coverdale's comment there about doing a good job. So I just wanted to reaffirm that.
Thank you. Anything, Glenn?
Yep, I'm glad that we do the financial audit and have it done by an outside agency so that our constituents all know that we're transparent and interested in making sure that our finances are as well reviewed and organized as they can be. So thank you all for doing what you're doing.
Okay. Okay, it looks like we've got all of the input, and I want to thank Chris again for spending time with us at evening, go over this and go forward to the next item on the agenda. Is that okay? This is information, right? There's no vote on this one. Okay, Mary, we'll go to item B. I'm sorry.
President Feldman, I think you need to accept.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got to accept. I haven't done this lately. Oh, okay. So do I have a motion to accept?
I will make a motion to accept the accounting report for June 30th, 2021 from June 2020. Financial years ended.
And I'll second that.
Okay, hearing a motion and accept. And a second, have a vote, please, Gina.
Okay, Director Coverdale?
Aye.
Director Michelson?
Yes.
Director Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Mueller?
Aye.
And President Feldman?
Yes. Okay, now, without further ado, to item B, water shortage advisory and public outreach update from Kathleen. I'm sorry, Mary.
I was just saying goodbye to,
I'm sorry.
Thank you to Chris.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good work. Thank you. Okay, Kathleen.
Okay, so January 1st marks the implementation of SFPUC's water allocations to all its wholesale customers. And the district was given our annual allocation for this calendar year, so January through December of 2022, of 342 million gallons, which will be seasonally allocated by month and adjusted for the season. Besides an allocation, it's also known as a water budget. So you may hear me use either term interchangeably. It's the same thing, allocation or water budget. Governor Newsom's executive order calling on all Californians to voluntarily reduce their water use by 15% is still in place. The State Water Resources Control Board on January 4th adopted mandatory conservation measures in response to the existing drought conditions. And that was to preserve critical water supplies and to mitigate the effects of the current drought throughout California. So as Director Coverdale mentioned, December drought conditions improved significantly across California and very dramatically in our Sierra Nevada mountain range. The image in my staff report, there's two from the U.S., it's from the U.S. Drought Monitor on the first page. It shows the first image is of drought conditions in November, and then the second image to the right is the improvements that happened over December. So you see, basically, we pretty much eliminated the exceptional drought conditions, the darkest color, but they're definitely, California is still in a drought, just conditions have improved significantly. So even locally here are the Denniston Creek watershed and the Pilarcitos Creek watershed saw significant improvements, and we've seen our local sources improve. And so this is very, very good news, but overall water supplies have not returned to normal, and again, drought conditions still exist. So SFPUC gave us an update last week, and they are still dealing with the curtailment orders on the Tuolumne River, even with the improved water storage conditions. And we are doing better than we were last year at this time, especially in the high country, in the Hetch Hetchy watershed. And San Francisco reported a 9.3% water savings from July 1st through December 31st when compared to last year. So we didn't quite make the 10%, but we did see a savings, which is good. The final text of the emergency regulations that the state board adopted on January 4th, there were some changes made. And so the final text was finally released on Friday. So it was after my staff report. But it pretty much, the items I listed in my staff report are fairly accurate, but I'll just go over them. The text of the final regulations includes prohibiting incidental runoff from landscape irrigation, prohibiting the use of a hose to wash a motor vehicle unless a shut-off nozzle is attached, to cease dispensing water immediately when not in use, prohibiting the use of potable water for washing sidewalks, driveways, building structures, patios, parking lots, or other hard surface areas. The prohibition, prohibiting the use of potable water for street cleaning or construction site preparation purposes. And this is one of the items that was modified a little bit. And then there's, unless no other method can be used to protect the health and safety of the public. So I think the state board would prefer if we use recycled water for those types of purposes, street cleaning and construction site for dust control and things like that. Prohibiting the application of water to irrigate turf and ornamental landscapes during and within 48 hours of measurable rainfall. And they define measurable rainfall as 1/4 of an inch. So this is a controversial one. There's a lot of agencies like it and other agencies don't. So there was a lot of discussion around that. It also includes prohibiting the use of potable water for irrigation of ornamental turf, basically lawn, on public street medians. They still would like, this was another controversial one because they want public trees to still be irrigated, but they don't want the water used to just irrigate lawn area in, along streets and things like that. So, so there was also a lot of discussion regarding that one. And the regulations also prohibit the use of potable water in decorative fountains, lakes or ponds, with the exception that the water is recirculated. So it's okay to replace water that's evaporated as long as you're recirculating the water. And then there was also language in the regulations regarding homeowners associations and prohibiting them from enforcing their rules on requiring like irrigation and certain types of landscape during a drought. So I didn't go through all that, but that was also included in the in the text of the regulation. So and then also, which made the headlines, was there's also fines associated with violating these new regulations, and a hotline where people can call and report water waste or violations of these regulations. So we will incorporate these in any ordinance that we create in the future. So so we are looking closely at the language in there. So if you have any questions regarding my staff report, be happy to answer it.
Well,
questions, anybody?
Just a comment for Kathleen and the great work. It is so difficult, as you well know as the professional, to convey this water conservation work when it's raining. It just, people just don't get it, and look what the State Water Board's sending us. and the governor's continually to talk about. And the reservoirs are still not being filled up properly, in my opinion. So it's a hard job for all of us to do, to convince people just because we had 12, 15 inches of rain in October, November, December. It doesn't mean we're out of the drought, and we got to keep pushing that. And I thank you for that.
Sure. Yes, I think the states, as I've mentioned before to others, the critical reservoirs the state's looking at, especially that impact the Delta, are Shasta and Oroville. So I think they'd feel much better if we saw those, have the potential to fill from either rain or the snowfall that's occurring. So those are critical ones to watch for sure.
Other comment? The Urban Water Management Committee met with the general manager and Kathleen and council to discuss the items. One of the things I guess, Kathleen, you're going to do is going forward is modify our ordinance or do an ordinance that will incorporate the new restrictions that are being laid out by the state, et cetera. Is that correct? In some future, maybe next meeting or anything after that?
Yeah, so staff, we're going to continue to work on an ordinance. Okay. And we're still evaluating our local sources, which, so far look very good. Right. I'm sure James will have more information on, our local sources in his report. So yeah, but we'll still be definitely working on another ordinance. Okay.
And the second item, of course, which is the little bomb there, the new allocations from SFPUC, the water budget for next year is interesting, and there's going to be more on that going forward. We had a discussion in our committee meeting, and there'll be more forthcoming perhaps next month about options and how do we approach that and how does that look to us as we move forward into the next year in terms of meeting those goals and approaches that we can help to maybe offset some of the restriction that this will place on us by being down about half of our daily budget starting in January. And that will be interesting and informative, I'm sure, when we talk about it soon. Correct,
yeah,
Mary?
Mary will probably have more to share with you on that. If not this meeting, next week meeting, we're meeting with other agencies and we're trying to meet with BOSCA and yes, and also evaluate our local sources. So we're trying to put the big picture together for the board and also for our customers.
Okay. It's a work in process at this point, but we feel comfortable, Chris and I, that we're moving along and trying to do some things to find ways to deal with the new water budget that has been allocated by the SFPUC. Other comments? Hearing none, I guess we will move to item C, which is review the district board committees, consider and approve appointment of board members to the Coastside County Water District board committees and appointments of district representatives to external organizations and associations. Mary, you want to go over that?
Yes. Okay. So annually, the board reviews the membership of the board standing and advisory committees and approves appointments. And also, in addition, the board approves appointments as district representatives to external organizations and associations. So I will share my screen again. I know there's a lot of sharing tonight, but I think it's important to put this one up because can you see my screen?
We have it, yes.
Okay, so here is the listing of the board committees that was approved last year. So the board needs to consider committees for the upcoming year.
As this is an ongoing yearly review, And I think we made some changes last year, if I remember correctly, with some repositioning. I, after reviewing this, didn't come up with anything that just struck me as being anything I would want to change on this list. However, I want to hear from any of you who feel that you may want to have considered. I thought it all looked good. It worked well. I think it's been going fine this year, and that the folks that have been on the committees have served very adequately and have done their due diligence and worked appropriately to meet their objectives. So again, it seems okay to me, but I'm happy to listen to any comments or changes you want to suggest.
I'm happy with the assignment list as it stands.
Okay, any other comments?
I would second that.
Okay. Ken, any comments?
I'm fine with it. I'm really excited to be involved with John on recycled, but I think we want to call it repurposed. Word for recycled. And I'm glad to work with Glenn. He's got a great forward vision, and he's much younger than I am, so I think it'll be great.
Okay, any other comments?
Ken, I'm catching up fast to you.
Looks like everybody's seems comfortable with the list as presented, and is there any action required on this, Mary, if there's no changes?
Yes, you'll need to approve this list. But I will say, to Director Coverdale's point, staff recommends that the Recycled Water Committee be renamed to the Water Reuse Committee. That's the lingo that's being used now. So
which committee? Which committee?
The Recycled Water Committee.
Become?
Be renamed the Water Reuse Committee.
Water Reuse Committee?
Yeah.
Okay, I have no problem with that. I mean, no,
I'm in favor. Can we get T-shirts?
Okay, so with that change, do I have a motion to accept the committee lineup for 2022?
Ken, the T-shirts have to be repurposed. They can't be new T-shirts.
I so move we accept the committee assignment as posted.
I second it.
You mean like Patagonia, Glenn?
There you go. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Right. Gina, take vote, please.
Sure. Director Coverdale?
Aye.
Director Michelson?
Yes.
Director Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Mueller?
Aye.
And President Feldman?
Yes. Okay. Item D, appointment of CCWD board member representative alternates to participate in San Mateo Local Agency Formation Committee LAFCO election of officers. Mary, I take this to mean that, as I understand reading this recommendation, that the president is the nominal appointee and then the other directors follow in order as alternates if he's not available. The vice president first and then everybody else.
I see. Yes, by seniority. Yeah, that's been past practice. So,
okay.
And we go ahead and we note that in the minutes and send LAFCO the minutes in order, to demonstrate the change.
Okay, does that take a motion too, or is that just noted in the minutes?
Well, you do need to appoint. So Patrick, I believe they have to make a motion.
Correct.
You got a motion for that?
Yes.
Okay, have a motion to appoint CCWD board members, representative alternates to participate in San Mateo Local Agency Formation Committee, LAFCO election of officers.
So move.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Gina, you want to call for a vote?
Roll call. Director Covidale?
Yes.
Director Michelson?
Yes.
Director Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Moeller?
Aye.
And President Feldman?
Yes. Okay, now item E, which was discussed a little bit earlier regarding the reaffirm resolution 2021-06, making findings pursuant to Assembly Bill 361 that in proclaimed state of emergency continues to impact the ability to meet safely in person. So what we've agreed to going forward is that next month, Mary will position this resolution earlier in the meeting agenda to make it more part of the process that would make it seem reasonable that we continue doing this over time. But at this point, we just need a motion to accept this recommendation.
Mr. President, I move that we make the findings pursuant to Assembly Bill 361 that the proclaimed state of emergency continues to impact the ability for us to meet safely in person.
Have a second?
Yep.
Have a second? Okay, Gina?
Okay, Director Covidale?
Yes.
Director Michelson?
Yes.
Director Reynolds?
Yes.
Vice President Moeller?
Aye.
And President Feldman?
Yes. Item F. Consider resolution 2022-02 amending general regulations regarding water service to address property owner / landlord responsibility for water bill after tenant default. Mary, would you give us an update on this, please?
Yes. Thank you, President Feldman. Staff has recently been reviewing the sections in our regulations and rate and fee schedule related to non-payment and of water bills and bad debt. So occasionally the district may incur bad debt from a tenant who vacates a property. Section 3107.5 of the Water Code includes a clause that the district may require the service to subsequent tenants be furnished on the account of the landlord of the property owner should a default occur. So staff recommends adding the clause as section G in our general regulations regarding water service to address property owner landlord responsibility for the water bill after a tenant defaults. Questions?
Questions, comments from the...
Just a very brief question. I think within the legal ramifications and on this bad debt, that's public knowledge, but we don't have to give specific names. Is that correct with legal counsel's advice? And I'd be curious, you know, a lot of people don't look at the numbers that we've just all gone through, but I'm sure hopefully our bad debt is not that severe, but we still have to be prepared to collect too. That's just, but no names can be given. Is that correct, legal counsel?
So if I may answer that, annually we report on bad debt and we do show names on the bad debt that we're writing off.
Right.
Okay.
And that is appropriate.
Thank you.
As we should. I do believe in shame. And to follow up on this, you know, this is kind of the trend, you know, and the further vilification of the landlord. Everything falls on the landlord. I can't vote for this. you know, I think at some point people are going to have to learn financial responsibility. And it was the tenant who used the water. They need to be financially responsible for it. I don't know how far, if we go to, you know, collection agencies, if we report them to credit bureaus, but to put further burden on the landlord when it wasn't them who used the water, I think is grossly unfair. I think the tenant needs to be held responsible and accountable. It wasn't the fault of the landlord. And I just really don't like this trend that everyone has an out and they can shove it off on the other guy. And the other guy seems to be the vilified landlord, speaking as a landlord. Thank you.
If I could just quickly do a clarification. So this action would not, and the district is legally prohibited from holding the landlord responsible for a defaulting tenant's bill. What this does is it allows the district to say, if you've got a tenant who is defaulted and the tenant moves out, for future tenants, you can have the bill be in the landlord or property owner's name. So it's not putting the landlord responsible for a defaulting tenant. It's just making him responsible for the next tenant. So I just want to make that clarification.
Yeah, no, I did read that, but should the subsequent tenant default, it falls back on the landlord.
If you do what this, and this is it's permissive. It doesn't mean you will do it, but if you wouldn't get in that situation because the property owner would then be responsible for the bill.
Yeah, and how do we know that the tenant is reimbursing the landlord? I mean, it takes the burden off the tenant, and I think at some point we need to teach people in America personal financial responsibility. And wish me luck.
Can I have other comment?
I have a comment, if I may. Does the water district, Patrick, have the right to take a deposit? When somebody gets a new water service, can we take a $250 deposit or a $500 deposit? And do we do that? And, you know, as long as we're a month ahead of somebody because of the deposit, doesn't it just take away all these concerns?
So I can answer the legal question, which is you can collect a deposit.
And we do. We collect a $75 deposit, but it is, which we have not increased that amount over the years, but we do take a $75 deposit, and with with a year's basically payments, then we return the deposit to the customer.
Well, it just seems to me like if we maybe up the deposit a little bit, and we are constantly sort of watching that, gee, the normal water bill is $100 a month, and you know we're holding $150. It kind of means that we don't have to worry about it. And if somebody gets a month behind, you know, you're already holding payment for that water. And so I just wonder if it doesn't make sense to do, you know, kind of like a first month's, last month's rent on an apartment or a house. I mean, I'm just making a suggestion, but I just wonder if that isn't easy.
I have a comment. As we've watched over the years, our bad debt, it seems like our biggest hits are from people there are tenants who skip out, but we have commercial entities who declare bankruptcy. Yeah. And that seems like that's a much bigger financial hit. And I think, you know, some of the things I've heard in the grapevine are, you know, whether we apply that to the property tax as a county responsible lien versus this. And if we were going to take an action on our debt. I worry a lot more about our large commercial accounts than I do our small tenants. I do think that the board is correct that nobody should be getting free water off at the penalty of the other constituents who are making an effort to pay their bill, because that's not fair to them. But the most egregious objection to that is in my eye, the large commercial accounts.
Okay, so the question is regarding this particular resolution and its validity or need. And can I ask Pat and Mary, is there some trend in this direction in other water districts? Is this something that we've seen happening, and that's one of the reasons why we feel that we need to consider this as an option at this point? I don't know, Pat's experience with seeing these and other venues, et cetera. What is germinated this to some degree? Has it become a problem elsewhere, and it's something that has to be done to help offset these defaults?
I can start, and then I can defer to Mary. So the statute that Mary referred to, Water Code Section 31,007.5, that's a specific statute in the county water district law. So this is an authority that county water districts have. And I can tell you that at least one other county, I serve as general counsel to 3 county water districts. One other one has this in place. And so it's just, it's another tool in your toolbox. We've used that term earlier today. This is another tool for the district management to use if they feel it's appropriate, and it's perfectly within the law for a county water district to do this. I will also tell you that there's also been more discussion about putting liens on property, which is already built into your regulations, if I remember correctly, and other ways to collect on water bills that are due.
And this doesn't affect the tenant, the initial tenant who defaults, but then it becomes the owner's responsibility for the next tenant to be responsible for that bill. And so I'm not a landlord. It's hard for me to, I understand Chris's assertions. It would seem to me that it would be incumbent upon the landlord, whoever that would be, to make sure that when the tenant occupies the premises, that there's some indication that he's able to cover the territory and be a good risk for the landlord and the property itself, which is all part of when you sign contracts for property and the taking over rentals and things like that. So I would expect that he's got some ability to make sure he doesn't get caught in that squeeze. But that's the only thing I can think, that might be germane here. And I don't have a problem doing this if, in fact, it's something that might happen and we want to have redress to make sure we get paid in the future. I mean, that's the way it is sometimes. I don't know any other way to do this. That's my opinion. I don't know any other people strongly pro or con on this. We need to.
I think from my perspective, I would very much like to table this till the next meeting and have a little time to think about it. I'm sorry, but it's not clear in my mind. I'm sorry, but I don't see a clear direction here. And
I second that. I'll second that.
Everyone voting for it, but I just think we had a table, and I'm sorry, I'm not getting it or something.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind further clarification. Where are we with COVID right now? Can we, historically, somebody didn't pay. We padlocked a meter. I mean, that's no longer on the table, is it?
No.
Well,
no, that's not this.
The executive order expired December 31st, 2021. So we're assessing right now what we can do. There's been other legislation that makes it, tough to, to shut off a customer for non-payment. So we're looking at, other areas. We do have the lien clause, but it's fairly, it's pretty onerous to do. So we were, and we're likely we're going to see a trend of some of of changing responsibility to the tenant on. So that's why we were looking at this. And Patrick pulled this out for us.
So what I'm hearing is a feeling on the part of the board that this be tabled until perhaps next month, or going forward, perhaps you can redefine this in some way or give us some other way of looking at this that might give us more insight into how this might work and bring it back at some point. Is that the general consensus here?
Yeah.
So we'll just put it on hold and look at it going forward. Is that okay?
Yep.
Sounds good. Alrighty. Next item on the agenda is quarterly financial review. Turn it over to Mary.
Okay. So thank you. I know Director Coverdale, you have questions on this, so I'm thinking that it might be helpful if I just bring up the attachment to the staff report. So, we're 6 months into the year, and I'm going to, kind of give the top level overview. We are 198,000 in the red on revenue, of which our water revenue is down by 444,000, and as being the bulk of that, although we have it's offset by non-operating revenue, and the big items here are the tax checks and the ERAF income came in higher than planned. So it's the impact on the revenue was, let's say, not as great, but we were down with getting our rains, irrigation stopping, and our water conservation measures going into effect, and we're calling lots of customers to turn off their irrigation with given water sparks. So, and then from the expense perspective, and I'll just drop to the bottom, we are actually below budget 426,000. So, just so we're ahead overall between revenue and expenses, 228,000. But our expenses largely came from savings in our water purchases. We didn't, buy as given our revenue was down. And also we were able to use some of our local sources in November and December, which normally they have a slow start. They usually pick up in January. So, that's the big number. The other number is open positions on the personnel side, and as being the, so given all of our personnel related salaries, benefits, where we had savings. So, and then there are odds and ends, other things, but those were the main items that contributed to, we're, being okay right now, but it is something where, we'll watch our expenses as we go forward with lower water use. So, any questions on that, first of all?
Ken had a comment earlier about formatting and the way something was presented. I'm not sure, Ken, is it related to this?
Well, the biggest question that I had, kind of originates on the monthly statements. It carries over here a little bit. it's kind of a whiny thing, but I was reading through this today, and I think that the concept of the variance is favorable or unfavorable just seems like a misnomer to me. You know, I don't really think it can be read as favorable or unfavorable. It just is what it is. It's either a plus or it's a minus. That's just kind of a neurotic part of me. But what concerned me the most with it was, if you look at Denison water treatment maintenance, you looked at general maintenance, you looked at maintenance in the well fields, and you looked at studies, surveys, and consulting, it's almost $200,000 that looks like anticipated expenses. And I know that we're just like, you know, we add up what we spend, but if you look at it from a budgeting standpoint, that's pretty significant under budgeting. And, you know, so my concern is that it's wrong or right or whatever, but it just seems like we know that these things are going to go forward. You know, don't we want to adjust it to where we're spending more closely to our budget? You know, we look at our income or our revenue side of the budget, and it seems like we're, you know, pretty dead on, except for a really easy explanation that we're not buying much water. And so I just think that in looking at this and looking at the monthly reports and also the capital improvement plan, to me, it just looks like we're starting to miss. And I know that there are lots of factors. Everybody wants to talk about, you know, not being able to get materials in time. And, you know, material prices are going up astronomical. And there's lots of maintenance and things that we can't anticipate. But I just think that, to me, the numbers seem like they're growing in those kind of unanticipated areas. So that's my concern. And I just don't really like the presentation. That's neurotic. So it doesn't really matter. In fact, I don't really need to even talk about that. We can talk about it further later. But I just think that going forward, given the times that we're in, it's really time to be careful with budgeting the, you know, future capital improvement projects and budgeting our expenses. I mean, I think that, you know, if we decide we're going to start improving well fields, do we go back and adjust our budget in that situation, or do we continue to show that there's a 40% increase in that budget? I don't know, or a 400% increase in that budget from $15,800 to $78,000. It's just, they're sort of like questions, not criticisms. That is wonder. And what should we be doing, or what can we encourage to try to be sure that that's more careful, assuming that we're going to have, you know, $451,000 shortfalls in revenue. That's a rhetorical question.
Mary, you want to bring the screen back up on them?
Okay.
So Ken, your point is that some of these numbers look like they're far from what was budgeted in terms of actuals, et cetera, et cetera. And is there a need to reforecast in some fashion either the remainder of the year and reset the budget with what we know now and come up with a new version of it for the remaining 5 months, February through the end, or alternately, potentially take account of what we're seeing now as we start the budget for the next series of years, and take that into account and put those numbers in with more finesse than in the past, given what we know about what we're seeing as part of the next budget's process. I'm not sure. I know how easy it is to reforecast, Mary. I mean, that's the whole point.
Well, I mean, certainly we could, if I can say that, we do look at our numbers, and we can give forecasts in categories. I will say there are categories such as maintenance, for instance, that some months we don't spend anything, and other months we spend more. And I think there are some timing issues. I mean, there's a few things on Denniston that we had the dredging that happens, and we ended up having to spend a little more on spoils removal. But some of this is figuring out even how we spread the timing of the budget. So, I think in past, I think historically we've been, in recent history, we've been pretty good at, making our numbers for the end of the year type of thing. But there are some categories like maintenance that the timing is difficult to judge. We had to do a fair amount on the wells. We started up the wells in November, and we had to replace some pumps and some things. We do have a budget for, like wells for the year, but, it's not spread, some of it's spreading. So, and also to President Feldman's point, this budget was actually put together a couple of years ago. So, right. But, certainly we can, we could give projections, and I know in other lives I've given projections of what I anticipate for the rest of the year. So that helps.
Other comments?
Through the chair. And I'm not trying to give you an extra drill, because I think you guys have plenty to do. But sometimes when you start to notice trends, it's just concerning. So the question is just, is it a hiccup or is it a trend? Yeah. And that's what it is. And but I think that's the fun thing about having more eyes than 2 or 4 on something is, maybe you look at it and see it a little bit differently. I think you're doing a great job. That isn't my point. So I want to make that clear.
Given Ken's comments and the nature of the economy and all of the things that we're dealing with, one of the questions that comes up in our next forecast for the next budget cycle is whether a 2-year cycle is really warranted, or we might consider a 1-year budget just to be on the safe side, not knowing a lot of the stuff that may transpire for the following year. That's just an idea. We've done 2 years at a time. It's easier, and we usually have been able to project well. This time, I'm not quite sure that I would feel as comfortable with quote a 2-year window, the same way that we have been in the past. And it might be something that we discuss as we move forward with the Finance Committee, et cetera. Other comments about the budget? I mean, I'm glad the bottom line still looks solid. I mean, it's all in the, proof is in the pudding. We're still doing pretty well this year, and hopefully we're going to finish out the year pretty good. And there may be burps in the detail, but as long as it comes out at the end where it should be, we can't complain. It's just a question of having better data going forward as to what things might really look like, next time around. So maybe that's what we learn out of this. Other comments?
I'm happy we're spending money on rehabbing local wells, which may potentially lead to more local production. So I see it towards a good end.
Okay, other comments? Glenn, John? Okay, the quarterly report looks good. I mean, it's changing, little differences than what we've got planned, but we're still doing the right stuff, and we just got to keep moving that capital out, that capital money, as Ken mentioned, because that's where the big numbers are, and make those things happen as we have committed. Other comments on this? Okay, now the next item is the treatment plant upgrade project update number 5 for Nunez. Mr. Durbin.
Good evening, board members. As you'll see in the board packet, we've got the typical table documenting the contract data. I'm happy to say that there is a $0 amount of change orders. If anything, we're still riding on a credit. Ranger's making good progress. It's been all centered around the Sed Basin. They had to wait for their breaks on their concretes before they could backfill around the back. They did have a 2-week kind of hiatus for the holidays. They are back in action. We are working on the buttresses right now. They've started a backfill around the back. You'll see in the pictures, the buttresses are those forms on the construction photos there. What that is going to do is support the influent channel to the new sedimentation basin. Later this month, we're going to have a shutdown where we have to pump down the flock basin so they can attach a pipe there. You'll see the pipe on the old plant there. Rangers making good progress. Fryer and Loretta's doing a great job. Staff's happy about it. We're busy, but we're really excited about this investment. So far, so good. If you have any questions, I'm here at your pleasure.
I'm good.
Okay, any questions, comments? Next thing, well, just keep up the good work and keep us posted. Hopefully they'll get things rolling again in January. A little less, you know, there'll be a few clear weeks now, so maybe we can not worry about any rain delays. General manager report.
Okay.
8A.
Okay, so under the America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018, the district was required to prepare a risk and resiliency assessment and certify with the EPA by June 30th, and also to prepare an emergency response plan and certify that document with the EPA by December 31st, 2021. So the district engaged Launch Consulting on these tasks. And I will say both of these efforts took hundreds of hours of staff time. So this past year. So we did certify our 277-page document, our emergency response plan. And I really, I want to, recognize and thank James, Gina, Sean Donovan, Darren Sturtevant, Todd Schmidt, and Dustin Johns, all their help with this amazing feat. So, I think we have a good document that we can work with. I think it'll be a living document, but it's something we have to update every 5 years. But I think we're very proud of what we put together. So, thank you. The other, my other report, last board meeting, I rushed off to the Half Moon Bay Planning Commission meeting, along with James as well. And I reported to you that I think 1154, our coastal development permit was approved for the water main replacement under Pelositas Creek at Strawflower. So, we're working on bid documents and easements and other things on that. So that's going forward. Staff's also working on 75th anniversary logos and things. We wanted to show you something tonight, but we're not quite ready for prime time yet. So that'll be later. So
75th anniversary. Wow, that's a milestone, I'll tell you. Well, that'd be interesting. Hope we're gonna publicize this somehow, right? And to the community, we move forward, perhaps. I'm just some kind of, I don't know. Well, think about it. I mean, it's just interesting. I didn't know we do that. On the emergency response plan update, is that kept in an archive somewhere for public review? Is it online in our? How does that work? I'm just. No.
This is a confidential document.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
Yeah, you don't want the terrorists.
Risk and resilience. Oh, it's a confidential. No, I hadn't heard about it. It's been so confidential. I didn't even know there was one. You got all these secrets every week, every month. There's a new document that you produce. Like last month, there was one with the county of San Mateo that had 200. I mean, you guys are doing all kinds of stuff behind the scenes that. Keep you more than busy, and I just don't know how you do it all. Actually, you want to know the truth. But the stuff we hear from you for every month is like, where'd this come from? So I just have to tell everybody what a great team you are and how good you are at doing the things you do with no noise. You just do it. You don't make any big deal. You just do your job, and you do all these things that have to be done that some of us don't even realize you're doing. So thank you and congratulations for all that stuff. I mean, it's great. Same with the last one you did last month with San Mateo County, same thing. This is a lot of work. You guys are doing a lot of stuff. And thanks for staying until midnight on last month to get your approval on the water, the thing down at the mall there at Strawflower. It was pretty late. We went to a couple of those too in the old days, right, Chris?
Yeah, they go forever.
And commission got the things, huh? I remember that. Well, good for you. More power to you, Mary. I give you credit. Finally, the operations report. Mr. Durbin again.
Good evening again. At the time of the writing, the Pilarcitos wells were running about 670. If you look at the production summary, I'm pretty impressed. I went back over a decade and we have not hit 21 million gallons in the month of December, really as far back as I can see. Yeah. It's rare to even get over 10 or 11 in December. So it's a banner start. I hope it continues. And I'm hoping I'll be given more good news throughout the year. Denniston raw water pump, the P2's out for a rebuild. It should be in soon. We won't really need that until the Pilarcitos season is over. So we're expecting that later in this month, early next. Nunes backwash pump number 2, auto transformer failure. We replaced that with a modern soft start after we couldn't get the old legacy parts. I think that was a good outcome there. The Christmas storm events, Mary wanted me to kind of summarize what we went through. The Crystal Springs pump station communication lines on the Cahill Ridge, there are copper lines in the ground because we can't get a good radio signal between the two. They're very susceptible to lightning damage, as you guys all know. It happens almost every year, if not more than once a year. We have put in lightning arresters and we have gone to redundant communications. So we use the copper lines as well as some wireless backup communication. So we had some lightning strikes up there, and I'm happy to say that our backup comms worked. They were strong, and we made the decision to not call staff out on Christmas Day to mess around with it. But the day after Christmas, they had replacement modems at both ends and had that repaired and back up so that we had redundancy. So that's just another fantastic way that staff has found out different ways to leverage redundancy so that we're not scrambling in an emergency. We had a 36-hour power outage in the Pilarcitos Canyon. Also, that's reflected in the production report. We had to eat a little bit of Crystal Springs water during that time. Darren was excellent at getting PG&E out there and guiding them and making sure that they're updating us. And that was restored later on. We had an Alves power outage. The backup power came in on Christmas Day. It was off for about 6 hours, came back on. That worked great, showing that our generator maintenance program is working well. Sometimes things don't always start, but the investment in the maintenance is definitely paying off there. We had some damage to the access road, the Denniston water treatment plant. The creeks kind of migrated across the access road to the treatment plant. Nothing disastrous, but we can't really do a whole lot with it until things dry out. And we have placed some temporary rock in there at my request so that we can still get through it and it doesn't get worse. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of road work there, and I'll kind of update you more once we formulate a plan. We're just gonna probably have to add a little bit of elevation to the road to get the creek to go back where it needs to be. And staff's actively looking at redundant internet service for Crystal Springs. I think we found some good technology out there that has worked at Denniston. Denniston's a very problematic place for internet service, and staff's moving along with that as well. So creating more resiliency in the water system. December sources, Crystal Springs, Pilarcitos wells, Denniston Reservoir, and their wells. Going on to projects, Cal OES PS grant. This is for the fuel storage at Nunes, to upgrade the 1,000-gallon diesel to a split tank, 5,000 diesel, 1,000 unleaded. I was working with their staff today, kind of clearing the way with some permit hangups that I think will be resolved in the next week or so. It's only going to take 7 to 10 days to get the tanks in. The tank, I believe, has shipped, and we should be able to do this in early February at the latest. Funny how sometimes people forget where the permit's at, and then you remind them the submittal's already in there. I won't name any agencies. You already heard about Nunez, EKI, Grandview Highway 1 crossing. It's 100% complete. We're working with the city, be meeting with them later this week to go over to the design. Pilarcitos Crossing, as Mary mentioned, the CDP got approved, and we're working on a bid schedule with EKI. That's an exciting project that is really going to help a lot of on-call operators sleep better at night. Miramontes Point Road design is due to be complete in early 2022. HDR is continuing their work on the tank replacement for the Half Moon Bay Tank Farm. And we're looking at 100% design to be expected in June. We do have the basis of design report now that they're updating based on our feedback. And then Director Coverdale had some questions about the district and how we calculate unmetered water. And I don't want to get into too much detail. It's been a long meeting, but I just wanted to point out that this includes, this calculation includes estimates for running sample taps at the plant. Sample taps run constantly, backwash, surface wash, and also the rinse water. These vary at each plant quite a bit. Denison uses a little bit more water than Nunez in terms of cleaning the filters. Denison also has the CCs there. This number is also influenced by leaks in main flushing, fire department use, automatic blow-offs, miscellaneous planned discharges, and tank levels. And tank levels is a big one because sometimes we will bank up to 500,000 gallons into a tank or withdraw 500,000 gallons out of a tank during the 30-day period. So the number moves around and we can talk about it a little more, but I just wanted to answer Director Coverdale's questions about that number and what it means and what influences it. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Oh, good job.
I have one. Your report looked like it was well under 10%. The unmetered water was an 8.1 or something like that. So I was really impressed with that. Isn't that low?
That's a good number. I think Kathleen might be able to speak a little better to that because this is water that we know where it went. And conservation has kind of evolved to look at non-revenue water now rather than unaccounted for water. I'm a little more under the, I don't know, the background of always wondering where's the water that didn't go through a meter. So I don't know if Kathleen wants to talk about it a little bit, but yeah, it's a good number. Kathleen, do you want to comment?
Yeah, so we've gotten away from using the terminology of unaccounted water or percent water loss. That's why we have to submit every year to the state our water loss audit, and they break it down into revenue water and non-revenue water. So this would kind of fall under non-revenue, but they have a different way of definitions and a way of categorizing, real losses versus apparent losses. Is it how much of it is a mistake from your billing? How much of it is error in your meters? So it's quite involved. It's based on the American Water Works M36 manual.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Well, I guess the comment I would make is I could find no material weaknesses in your management process.
Can you say good job?
Well, let me think about it for 10 years. Great. Thank you. And thanks for reporting on that. I really appreciate it. It's just interesting to see
it looks like
how amazingly complete you guys can manage all of these resources. I'm incredibly impressed. And I appreciate your patience and perseverance in providing the information, but it just makes us feel good. And what I, as a board member, do with that is report that to the customers. Hey, what about this? And I go, do you have any idea what this district is managing? Do you have any idea the degree of carefulness that goes on in the management of the money and the water and the resources and the health and safety and welfare of the staff? And so it's nice to have fuel to burn the appropriate fire, because we get calls too, you know, oh my gosh, do you know that, you know? So it's wonderful to report things like how carefully we measure our water. So I really appreciate it. Great job. Not good job, great job.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make sure we remind ourselves about the 25th of January. We are scheduled for another meeting. Is that correct, staff?
Yes, that's correct. 7 p.m. to talk about redistricting.
20, okay. All right. December looked like an interesting month for you, Jim, and your staff. And I don't think Santa was very kind to you for some reason. He really threw a lot of curveballs there at the end of the month, and you guys stepped up to it and kept us in water. Never a burp, no hiccups. I mean, amazing. So thank you to you and your staff for all that you do in not the best of weather conditions, that's for sure. Are there any director requests for future meetings or other items? Yeah, director agenda item request for a future meeting, which should be the last thing on the agenda.
I'm going to be leaving at 4:30 in the morning to go check on the snow contact and contacting the Sierras to beat Michelson and Coverdale.
Okay, well.
I'm concluding. Thank you.
Get a good night rest.
Oh, yeah.
All right, any other?
I would just like to comment that 75th anniversary is typically the diamond anniversary. So I've got a great idea for what to pass out.
Yeah, sure.
75th anniversary belt buckles.
Yeah. Other comments, questions? It's been a longer meeting than normal, but we had a lot of important things to do, and I think we did them with great professionalism, and I want to thank you all for your time tonight and good nature and fortitude, as we would say, and I wish you the best for a good new year going forward, and we'll see you, I guess, on the 25th. Is that the
yeah. Thanks.
The date? Yeah, we'll hear more about that, I guess, from Mary going forward. All righty, that's all. I'll adjourn the meeting officially and see you again.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good job.
Mary, I'll come by and sign tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Mary?